My sister said, I never stopped thinking about you. But when I let her back in, she stole my identity, sued me for defamation, and left a bag of substances in a box with my childhood doll. When I confronted her in court, she smiled and said, family is forever. I just walked out. That was 3 months ago. Today, I finally sleep with both eyes closed. The first time she messaged me in years, she said she missed me. My sister and I hadn't spoken since our 20s, when she bailed on rent, maxed out our shared credit card, and blamed me for it. I moved out. She spiraled. I promised myself I was done. But this time, she sounded different. She said she was sober now, that she wanted to reconnect, that she'd been going to meetings, working part-time, and trying to get her life back together. She asked to meet for coffee. I told myself people change. I told myself she was still my sister, and I missed having one. So I met her. She looked tired, older, but grounded. She cried when she saw me and said, I never stopped thinking about you. I decided to let her back in, slowly at first. She needed rides to job interviews, help filling out forms, and a place to crash, just for a week, while her roommate moved out. 1 week became 2, then a month. At first, it felt like healing. She cooked dinner once, cleaned up after herself. She even said thank you, which was a big deal for her. But then came the little things. She borrowed my debit card to grab groceries. She started opening my mail, saying she thought it was junk. I'd come home and find her using my laptop, my printer out of paper. My tax documents moved. She said, I just wanted to help. I wanted to believe her. The first real red flag was a missed payment on my credit card, one I hadn't used in months. Then came the letter. A thick envelope from a collections agency. A credit account under my name that I'd never opened was past due. I checked my bank account. $1,200 gone. I ran to my filing cabinet. My birth certificate was missing. I confronted her the next morning. She denied everything and started to cry. Said I was paranoid. Said I needed to calm down and stop accusing people who care. I wanted to believe her. I almost did. But that afternoon, I got a notification that someone had applied for a car loan in my name. I called the bank and froze everything. Then I called a lawyer. She played dumb until I showed her the printouts. Then the rage came. You think you're better than me? She screamed. I just needed help. I told her to get out. She slammed the door so hard the frame cracked. What followed was months of legal paperwork, phone calls, hold music, and hollow apologies from institutions. I filed a police report. I froze my credit. I worked with a lawyer to dispute false accounts. I missed work, lost sleep, broke down crying in my car more times than I can count. My credit was wrecked. But worse than that, I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not when they asked for help. Not when they said they'd changed. My sister didn't just steal my money or my name. She stole my ability to believe. I track every dollar now, obsessively. Some days I feel like I'm still in the fog, still waiting for the next surprise bill or rejection letter. She hasn't reached out since the order was issued. Then yesterday, I got yet another mysterious phone call, and I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to it, I found out my sister had hired a lawyer and was planning to sue me. I thought everything was finally over, but now I'm not so sure. I sat in my car for an hour after hearing that voicemail. Just sat there, engine off, staring at nothing. The lawyer's voice kept replaying in my head. Something about defamation and false accusations, and how my sister Melissa was seeking damages. Damages? From me? After what she did? I couldn't process it. I finally drove home and called my friend Taylor. She's been my rock through all of this. Taylor came over with pizza and listened while I played the voicemail for her. She works in insurance, so she knows a bit about legal stuff. Not enough to replace a real lawyer, but enough to keep me from completely freaking out. I spent the whole night researching defamation lawsuits online. My eyes burned from staring at my screen. According to everything I read, she didn't have a case. I had documentation. I had proof. But that didn't stop the panic attacks that kept hitting me every few hours. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Marcus. He's been handling the identity theft case for me. I left a message with his receptionist, then headed to work. I couldn't afford to miss another day. My boss had been understanding at first, but her patience was wearing thin. I work at an accounting firm, and tax season was approaching. Everyone needed to pull their weight. I couldn't focus all day. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Marcus to call back. My coworker Diane noticed something was wrong and brought me coffee. I didn't tell her details. I was too embarrassed. Who wants to admit their own sister stole their identity? Marcus finally called back during my lunch break. I sat in my car again, that same parking spot where I'd had so many breakdowns over the past few months. He told me not to worry. Said Melissa's lawsuit was likely a scare tactic. Said we had all the evidence on our side. I wanted to believe him, but my trust was poop. I went back to work and somehow made it through the day. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. No return address. I knew the handwriting immediately. Melissa. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won out. Inside was a photo of us as kids. We were maybe 10 and 12, arms around each other at the beach. On the back she'd written, "Remember when we were family?" That was it. No apology, no explanation, just emotional manipulation, plain and simple. I tore it up and threw it in the trash. Then I took the trash out immediately, like the photo might somehow reassemble itself if I left it in my house. I was being paranoid, but that's what Melissa had reduced me to. That night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow." I blocked the number without responding. 10 minutes later, another text from a different number. "It's important. Please." I blocked that one too. I took a sleeping medicine and went to bed early. I dreamed about Melissa. In the dream, we were kids again, and she was taking my toys one by one while I watched, unable to move or speak. I woke up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat. The next day was Saturday. I had planned to catch up on work, but I couldn't concentrate. I decided to go to the gym instead, burn off some anxiety. I was on the treadmill when I saw her, Melissa, just standing there in the gym entrance, scanning the room. I ducked down and pretended to tie my shoe. When I looked up, she was gone. Maybe she was never there. Maybe I was losing it. I went straight home and double-checked all my locks. I called Taylor again and asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. She said of course. I packed a bag, grabbed my important documents, what was left of them, and headed over. Taylor lives in a secure building with a doorman. I felt safer there. We ordered takeout and watched mindless TV. I didn't check my phone all evening. It was the first peace I'd had in days. Sunday morning, Taylor went out for groceries. I was alone in her apartment when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message notification popped up immediately. Against my better judgment, I listened. It wasn't Melissa this time. It was a woman named Karen, claiming to be Melissa's sponsor from her recovery program. She said Melissa was really trying to make amends. Said I should give her a chance to explain. Said Melissa was in a bad place mentally and needed her family. I deleted the message. If Melissa was really in recovery, she wouldn't be suing me. She wouldn't be stalking me. She wouldn't be sending strangers to guilt me into contact. This was just more manipulation. Taylor came back and found me crying on her couch. I told her about the call. She suggested I change my phone number. It seemed extreme, but I was desperate. We spent the afternoon at the phone store getting me set up with a new number. I felt a little better afterward. Monday came and I had to go back to work. Taylor offered to drive me. As we pulled into the parking lot, I saw Melissa standing by the entrance to my building. This time I was sure it was her. Taylor saw her too. I ducked down in the passenger seat. Taylor drove right past the entrance and around to the back of the building. I used the service entrance and snuck in through the mailroom. I felt ridiculous, like I was in some bad spy movie, but I made it to my desk without being seen. Around lunchtime, the receptionist called my extension. "There's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister." My heart nearly stopped. I told the receptionist I wasn't available and to please ask her to leave. 5 minutes later, security was escorting Melissa out. I watched from the window of the break room, my hands shaking so badly I spilled my coffee. My boss called me into her office that afternoon. I thought for sure I was getting fired. Instead, she asked if everything was okay, if I needed help. Apparently, after Melissa was escorted out, she made a scene in the parking lot, started yelling about how I was ruining her life, how I was the reason she couldn't get back on her feet. I broke down and told my boss everything, the identity theft, the lawsuit threat, the stalking. She was surprisingly understanding, said her brother had dependency issues too. She gave me the rest of the day off and the number for the company's employee assistance program. They offered free legal consultations. I called the number from Taylor's apartment that evening. They connected me with a lawyer named Jordan who specialized in identity theft cases. Jordan listened to my whole story, then told me something that made my blood run cold. Melissa's lawsuit wasn't just a threat anymore. She'd actually filed it. I was being sued by my own sister for defamation, emotional distress, and something called tortious interference. I called Jordan back the next morning. I needed to understand what tortious interference even meant. Turns out Melissa was claiming I'd sabotaged her job prospects by telling potential employers about the identity theft. That was complete nonsense. I hadn't contacted anyone. I barely had the energy to get through my own workday, let alone track down her job applications. Jordan explained that we needed to file a response to the lawsuit within 21 days. The clock was already ticking. I'd need to gather all my documentation, police reports, credit bureau disputes, bank statements, everything. I spent that night at Taylor's dining table, sorting through papers and scanning documents to email to Jordan. Around midnight, Taylor's buzzer rang. We both froze. Nobody should be visiting at this hour. Taylor went to the intercom while I hid in the bathroom, feeling pathetic but genuinely scared. "There's a woman down here saying she needs to talk to her sister," Taylor told me after sending the visitor away. "She seems pretty messed up." I peeked out the window and saw Melissa pacing on the sidewalk below. She looked thin, jittery. She kept looking up at the building like she could somehow see through walls. Eventually she left, but I barely slept that night. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't risk another confrontation. Jordan had advised me to document every unwanted contact from Melissa, so I started keeping a log. Date, time, what happened. It was depressing to see it all written down. Taylor had to go to work, so I was alone in her apartment. Around noon, my new phone rang. It was Marcus, my original lawyer. He'd received the lawsuit paperwork and wanted to coordinate with Jordan. They were going to tag team my defense. I felt a tiny bit of relief knowing I had two professionals in my corner. Just as I hung up, Taylor's buzzer rang again. I ignored it. Then my phone dinged with a text from Taylor. "Don't answer door. M is here again. Called building security." I peeked out the peephole just in time to see Melissa being led away by the building's security guard. She was shouting something I couldn't make out. I slumped against the door, heart racing. How did she even know I was staying with Taylor? I'd been so careful. When Taylor got home that evening, we had a serious talk. She was worried about my safety, and honestly, so was I. Melissa seemed to be escalating. Taylor suggested I stay with her sister Susan in the suburbs for a few days. Susan had a spare room and lived in a quiet neighborhood. Maybe Melissa wouldn't think to look for me there. I agreed and packed my things again. I was becoming a professional nomad at this point. Taylor drove me to Susan's place that night. Susan was nice, if a bit awkward around me. I was a stranger bringing drama into her home after all, but she made up the guest room and showed me where everything was. The next morning, I had a video call with both lawyers. They explained our strategy. We would countersue for harassment and file for a more permanent restraining order. The temporary one clearly wasn't working. They also suggested I start therapy. The emotional toll was obvious, even through a computer screen. I spent the day working remotely from Susan's dining room. It was quiet there. No mysterious phone calls, no unexpected visitors. For the first time in weeks, I completed a full day's work without interruption. I almost felt normal. That evening, Susan invited her neighbor Dakota over for dinner. Dakota was a police officer, though she was off-duty and in regular clothes. I had a feeling Susan had arranged this on purpose, but I didn't mind. Dakota gave me practical safety advice without making me feel like a victim. She suggested I vary my routines, be aware of my surroundings, and document everything. She also showed me how to check for tracking devices on my car, which hadn't even occurred to me. After dinner, I checked my email and found a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was Family Matters. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. It was from Melissa. "I know you're hiding," she wrote, "but we need to talk face to face. I'm not the bad guy here. You've turned everyone against me. Mom and Dad would be so disappointed in you. Our parents had died in a car accident when I was 25 and Melissa was 23. It was after their death that her substance use had really accelerated. Bringing them into this felt especially low. I forwarded the email to Jordan and Marcus, then tried to put it out of my mind. Susan and I watched a cooking show until my eyelids got heavy. I thanked her for her hospitality and went to bed. The next day was Friday. I decided to go into the office. I couldn't hide forever, and I had meetings that were better handled in person. Dakota offered to drive me, since she was heading that way anyway. I accepted gratefully. Work went surprisingly well. My boss checked in on me, but otherwise treated me normally, which I appreciated. I had lunch with my coworker Diane, who kept the conversation light. By the end of the day, I was feeling almost optimistic. That changed when I walked to the bus stop after work. A car pulled up beside me and the passenger window rolled down. Melissa was in the driver's seat. "Get in," she said. "We need to talk." I kept walking, heart pounding. She drove slowly alongside me. "I'm serious," she called out. "This has gone too far. Just give me 5 minutes." People were starting to stare. I quickened my pace, pulling out my phone to call Dakota. Before I could dial, Melissa accelerated and pulled ahead of me, then swerved to the curb and got out. She blocked my path on the sidewalk. Up close, she looked worse than before. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her movements jerky, but she wasn't slurring or stumbling. This wasn't substances. This was desperation. "You're ruining my life," she said, her voice low but intense. "I'm trying to get better, and you're making it impossible." I told her to leave me alone, that we could only communicate through our lawyers now, that she needed to stop following me. She laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "You think you're so perfect. You always have. But I know things about you, things you wouldn't want people to know." A bus pulled up then, and I darted around her to board it. I didn't even check if it was the right route. I just needed to escape. Through the window, I watched her kick a trash can, then get back in her car. I called Dakota as soon as I found a seat. She told me to get off at the next stop and wait for her. 20 minutes later, she picked me up and drove me back to Susan's. I filed another police report that evening, adding it to my growing collection. The weekend passed without incident. I stayed at Susan's, worked on my case with the lawyers via email, and tried to relax. By Sunday night, I was feeling brave enough to go back to my own apartment. I missed my space, my things. Dakota offered to check the place out first, make sure it was secure. We drove over together Monday morning. Everything looked normal from the outside. Dakota did a thorough sweep, checking closets, under the bed, behind the shower curtain, all clear. She helped me change my locks before heading to work. I spent the day cleaning and doing laundry. It felt good to be productive, to reclaim my space. I ordered groceries for delivery rather than going out. Jordan called with an update. We had a court date for the restraining order hearing, 2 weeks away. I could manage 2 more weeks. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in over a week. I woke up feeling rested, almost hopeful. I got ready for work, grabbed my keys, and opened my front door. There was a small box on my welcome mat. No shipping label, no markings, just a plain cardboard box. I nudged it with my foot. It was light, not ticking or anything ominous. Still, I was wary. I picked it up carefully and brought it inside. I used a blade to slit the tape and open the flaps. Inside was a doll. Not just any doll, but Miss Penny, my childhood toy. Her yarn hair was matted, her button eyes mismatched from repairs. I hadn't seen her in decades. I thought she'd been lost in one of our many childhood moves. Under the doll was a note in Melissa's handwriting. "Remember who really took care of you when Mom and Dad were fighting? Remember who protected you? I saved her for you all these years. I've always looked out for you, even when you didn't know it." I sat on my kitchen floor, holding Miss Penny. Memories flooded back. Melissa had been different when we were kids. Protective, kind even. Before the substances, before the lies. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for what our relationship could have been. Then I noticed something else in the box. A small plastic bag with white powder, and another note. "In case you want to relax for once in your uptight life." I dropped the bag like it was on fire. This was a new low. Was she trying to frame me? Get me hooked too? I called Dakota immediately. She came over and took the substances, promising to dispose of them properly. She suggested I install a doorbell camera. I ordered one that same day. At work, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Karen again, Melissa's supposed sponsor. "Please," she said. "Melissa is really struggling. She's trying to make amends, but she feels like you've shut her out completely." I told Karen about the box, about the substances. There was a long silence. "That's not part of any recovery program I know," she finally said. She sounded genuinely shocked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Before hanging up, she told me Melissa had been attending meetings irregularly, that she'd show up, share tearful stories about her cruel sister, then disappear for weeks. Karen had believed her. Many people in the group had. They'd been giving her money, places to stay. I felt a weird mix of vindication and sadness. Melissa was still manipulating people, still lying. But now I had another ally who'd seen through her. The doorbell camera arrived and I installed it that evening. I felt a little safer knowing I could see who was at my door before opening it. I even slept through the night without waking up in a panic. The next morning, my phone blew up with text messages from coworkers. Apparently, Melissa had shown up at my office again, this time with flyers. She'd been handing them out in the parking lot before security stopped her. The flyers had my picture and wild accusations, that I was a substance dealer, that I'd stolen from our parents before they died, that I was mentally unstable. My boss called me directly. She was sympathetic but concerned. The company had clients coming in that day. They couldn't have someone distributing defamatory materials on their property. She suggested I work from home until things settled down. I agreed, humiliated. I'd done nothing wrong, yet I was the one being punished. I packed up my laptop and some files, then asked Dakota if she could pick me up. I didn't want to risk running into Melissa in the parking lot. Dakota arrived 20 minutes later. As we drove away from my office building, I spotted Melissa's car across the street. She was just sitting there, watching. Dakota saw her too and made a sudden turn, losing her in traffic. Back at my apartment, I checked my doorbell camera footage. Melissa had been there at 5 a.m., leaving the box. The camera had captured her clearly. I sent the footage to both lawyers and the police, adding it to my growing file. Jordan called that afternoon with news. The judge had agreed to move up our restraining order hearing based on the escalating harassment. We were now scheduled for Monday, just 5 days away. I felt a surge of relief. Surely a judge would see what was happening and put a stop to it. That evening, Taylor came over with dinner. We were catching up when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. I ignored it. A minute later, Taylor's phone rang. She answered. Then her face went pale. "It's for you," she said, handing me her phone. "It's your sister." I took the phone, anger replacing fear. I told Melissa to stop calling, stop following me, stop spreading lies, that she needed real help, not whatever game she was playing. "You think this is a game?" she replied, her voice eerily calm. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. You've pushed me too far." I hung up and blocked the number on Taylor's phone. We spent the next hour checking that all my windows were locked, that my new doorbell camera was working. Taylor offered to stay the night, and I gratefully accepted. The next day, I had a video call with Jordan to prepare for Monday's hearing. She coached me on what to say, what evidence we'd present. I felt more confident afterward. The law was on my side. The truth was on my side. Around noon, my doorbell camera alerted me to movement. I checked the feed and saw a delivery person leaving a large envelope. I waited until they were gone, then retrieved it cautiously. Inside was a formal letter from Melissa's lawyer. They were amending their lawsuit, now claiming I had defamed Melissa to her recovery group, causing her extreme emotional distress and social isolation. They were increasing the damages sought to $250,000. I forwarded the letter to Jordan, who called me immediately. She wasn't worried, said this was just another intimidation tactic. The new claims were as baseless as the original ones. Still, I felt the weight of it all crushing down on me again. That afternoon, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I'd been cooped up for days, afraid to leave my apartment, but it was a beautiful day, and there were plenty of people around. Surely Melissa wouldn't try anything in public. I walked to the small park near my building and sat on a bench, feeling the sun on my face. For a few minutes, I almost felt normal. Then I noticed a woman on a bench across from me, watching. It wasn't Melissa. This woman was older, with gray-streaked hair, but she was definitely staring at me. I got up to leave and she approached. "Are you Alex?" she asked. I didn't confirm or deny, just asked who was asking. "I'm Quinn," she said, Melissa's roommate. My guard went up immediately. Was this another of Melissa's tactics? Send a stranger to approach me? Quinn must have sensed my suspicion. "I'm not here on her behalf," she said quickly. "Actually, I'm worried about her, and about you. We ended up getting coffee at a nearby shop." Quinn explained that she'd met Melissa at a recovery meeting 6 months ago. Melissa had seemed committed to getting sober, to rebuilding her life. Quinn had a spare room and needed help with rent, so she'd offered it to Melissa. Things were fine at first. Melissa got a part-time job, paid her share on time, attended meetings. Then about 2 months ago, right around when Melissa first contacted me, things changed. She started coming home late, being secretive. Quinn found unfamiliar pills in the bathroom. When confronted, Melissa claimed they were prescribed, but wouldn't say what for. "Then last week I found these in her room while she was out," Quinn said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies of my personal documents, my social security card, my birth certificate, even my passport, all expertly forged with slight alterations. "I think she's planning something bigger," Quinn said. "Something worse than what she's already done to you." I felt sick. I thought I'd protected myself. New locks, frozen credit, doorbell camera, but Melissa was still finding ways to hurt me. Quinn had one more bombshell. Melissa wasn't actually suing me. The lawyer's letters, the amended complaint, all fake. Quinn had found templates on Melissa's laptop, along with research on how to forge legal documents. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why betray your roommate?" Quinn's eyes welled up. "Because I've been where you are. My brother did the same thing to me years ago. Stole my identity, drained my accounts. By the time I figured it out, I was bankrupt. I lost my house. My marriage fell apart from the stress." She wrote down her phone number and gave it to me. "If you need anything, or if you're worried about what Melissa might do next, call me." I walked home in a daze, clutching the envelope of forged documents. I called Jordan as soon as I got back to my apartment and told her everything. She advised me to bring the documents to the police immediately, to add to my report. Dakota came to drive me to the police station. The officer who took my statement seemed more concerned this time. The forged federal documents elevated things. He made copies for their file and returned the originals to me for my court hearing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Quinn had said, that Melissa was planning something bigger, something worse. What could be worse than what she'd already done? I got my answer the next morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone, email, and doorbell camera all alerted simultaneously. I checked my phone first. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email now." The email was from Melissa. No subject line. Just an attachment and 3 words in the body. "Call it off." The attachment was a video. I clicked play and my blood ran cold. It showed me, clearly entering Quinn's apartment building. Then cut to me and Quinn at the coffee shop. Then to us walking together afterward. The final poop was of me taking the envelope from Quinn. While I was watching the video, my doorbell camera alerted again. I switched to that feed and saw Melissa standing at my door. She looked directly at the camera and smiled. "I know you're in there," she said. "I know what Quinn gave you. Call off the hearing on Monday, or I send this video to everyone. Your boss, your friends, the police. I'll tell them you two are conspiring against me, that you paid her to lie, that you're the one forging documents." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called Dakota, but it went to voicemail. I called Jordan next. She answered on the first ring. "Don't delete anything," she said after I explained. "Save the video, the text, everything. This is actually good for us. She's just given us evidence of blackmail on top of everything else." I felt marginally better after talking to Jordan, but still shaken. Melissa had been following me, filming me. How long had this been going on? What else did she have? I spent the day gathering all my evidence for Monday's hearing. Bank statements showing the stolen money, police reports, the forged documents from Quinn, the doorbell camera footage, the blackmail video and text. It made a substantial pile. That evening, my doorbell camera alerted again. This time it was Taylor looking worried. I I let her in, and she hugged me immediately. Quinn called me, she said. She's been trying to reach you all day. I turned off my phone after the blackmail text, not wanting to deal with any more messages from Melissa. Taylor explained that Quinn had gone home after our coffee meeting to find her apartment ransacked. Melissa had figured out Quinn had betrayed her and had destroyed her things in retaliation. Quinn's staying with her sister now, Taylor said. She wanted me to tell you she's still planning to testify on Monday. She's not backing down. I felt a surge of gratitude for this woman I barely knew, who was risking so much to help me, and for Taylor, who'd stood by me through all of this. The weekend crawled by. I jumped at every noise, checked my doorbell camera obsessively, but there was no sign of Melissa. No more texts or emails. The silence was almost worse than the harassment. What was she planning? Monday morning arrived and I dressed carefully for court. Professional, but not flashy. Jordan had coached me on this too. I wanted to look like the responsible sister, the victim, not someone vindictive or unstable. Taylor drove me to the courthouse. Dakota met us there, along with Quinn. We all entered together, a small army of support. Jordan was waiting inside with Marcus. They both looked confident, which helped calm my nerves. We were directed to a small courtroom. As we entered, I saw Melissa already seated on the other side. She was alone. No lawyer. She'd dressed up too, in a conservative blue dress I'd never seen before. She looked almost normal, almost like the sister I remembered from before everything went wrong. For a moment, our eyes met across the room. I expected anger, defiance. Instead, I saw something that looked almost like sadness. Regret, maybe? Then her expression hardened, and she looked away. The hearing began. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the file. Jordan presented our evidence methodically. The identity theft, the harassment, the forged documents, the blackmail attempt. Quinn testified about what she'd found in their apartment. Dakota spoke about the police reports and the escalating nature of Melissa's behavior. Throughout it all, Melissa sat silently. When it was her turn to respond, she stood up slowly. I don't have a lawyer, she said, her voice small in the large room. I can't afford one. Everything they're saying, it's not the whole story. She started to tell a rambling tale about how I'd abandoned her after our parents died, how I'd always been the favorite, how she'd only borrowed money she thought she was entitled to, how she'd only wanted to reconnect with her sister. The judge listened patiently, then asked if she had any evidence to counter our claims. Melissa shook her head. Just my word, she said, but nobody believes that anymore. The judge granted the permanent restraining order. Melissa was to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. No contact of any kind. Not in person, not by phone, not by email or social media, not even through third parties. The judge also referred our case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to the identity theft and forgery. As we stood to leave, Melissa suddenly called out my name. The judge warned her about violating the order. Melissa nodded, then looked directly at me. This isn't over, she said quietly. Family is forever. I felt a chill run down my spine at Melissa's words. The bailiff stepped between us and Jordan quickly ushered me out of the courtroom. In the hallway, Taylor, Dakota, and Quinn surrounded me like bodyguards. I was shaking so bad I could barely walk. She can't hurt you anymore, Jordan said, squeezing my shoulder. The order is crystal clear. One violation and she's looking at prison time. I nodded, but couldn't shake Melissa's final words. Family is forever. It wasn't a reconciliation attempt. It was a threat. We all went to lunch after court. Everyone tried to keep the conversation light, but I couldn't focus. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting to see Melissa lurking nearby. Quinn noticed and moved seats so she was blocking my view of the door. Small gesture, but it helped. What happens now? I asked Jordan between bites of a sandwich I wasn't tasting. We wait, she said. The DA will review the evidence for criminal charges. Could take weeks, though. The system isn't exactly speedy. Great. More waiting. More looking over my shoulder. More jumping at shadows. I went back to work the next day. My boss welcomed me back and didn't mention the whole Melissa drama, which I appreciated. My coworkers were less subtle. I caught whispers, saw conversations stop when I walked into the break room. Diane brought me coffee and asked directly if I was okay. I gave her the short version. She seemed genuinely sympathetic. The rest of the week was quiet. Too quiet. No sign of Melissa. No mysterious packages. No calls from unknown numbers. I should have been relieved, but instead, I felt like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I checked my doorbell camera obsessively, changed my email password daily, drove different routes to work. The hypervigilance was exhausting, but I couldn't turn it off. The weekend came, and Taylor insisted I join her and some friends for dinner. I almost canceled 3 times, but eventually forced myself to go. It was actually nice. For a few hours, I forgot about Melissa and just enjoyed normal conversation about movies and restaurants and other people's normal problems. Sunday morning, I woke up to a text from Quinn. Check your email. Don't freak out. I opened my email with shaky hands. There was a message from Quinn with a forwarded email from Melissa. She'd contacted Quinn asking for help moving her stuff out of their shared apartment. Said she was leaving town, moving to Arizona to stay with a cousin, starting fresh. I didn't believe it for a second. This was exactly the kind of fake out Melissa would pull to get me to let my guard down. I called Quinn immediately. Is this for real? She's actually leaving? Quinn wasn't sure either. She'd agreed to let Melissa get her things, but only with her brother present as a witness. She promised to let me know how it went. Later that day, Quinn confirmed Melissa had indeed packed up all her belongings, left her key on the counter, even paid her portion of the utility bill in cash. Quinn's brother had watched the whole thing and reported that Melissa seemed subdued, almost defeated. She asked about you, Quinn told me, wanted to know if we were still in touch. I didn't answer. I thanked Quinn for the update but reminded myself not to get too comfortable. This could all be part of some elaborate scheme. Monday came, and I threw myself into work. Tax season was ramping up, and the distraction was welcome. I stayed late, catching up on everything I'd fallen behind on during the court drama. It was nearly 8 p.m. when I finally headed home. I was unlocking my apartment door when I noticed something off. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. I froze, keys in hand. Had I forgotten to lock it that morning? No way. I'd been double-checking everything. I backed away slowly, pulling out my phone to call Dakota. Before I could dial, I heard a crash from inside my apartment. Someone was definitely in there. I ran down the hall to my neighbor Alex's door and knocked frantically. Alex was a big guy who worked as a bouncer on weekends. He answered, took one look at my face, and immediately understood something was wrong. I explained the situation in a whispered rush. Alex grabbed a baseball bat from behind his door and followed me back to my apartment. The door was now wide open. Alex went in first, bat raised. I stayed in the hallway, phone ready to call 911. A minute later, Alex called out that it was clear. No one was inside. I entered cautiously. My apartment looked like a tornado had hit it. Drawers pulled out and emptied. Furniture overturned. Pictures smashed. In the kitchen, someone had emptied every container in my pantry onto the floor and poured dish soap over the mess. But the worst was my bedroom. Written on my wall in what looked like red lipstick were the words, "Family is forever." I called the police immediately. They arrived within minutes, took photos, dusted for prints, asked lots of questions. I showed them the restraining order paperwork. They promised to look for Melissa, said this was a clear violation. Dakota arrived while the police were still there. She'd come as soon as I texted her. She helped me clean up after they left, neither of us mentioning the obvious. Melissa had been in my home, touching my things, violating my space in the most personal way possible. I couldn't stay there that night. The locks were broken, and besides, I couldn't sleep surrounded by Melissa's handiwork. Dakota offered her couch, and I gratefully accepted. The next morning, I called my landlord about fixing the locks. He agreed to replace them that day, and even offered to install a deadbolt at no extra charge. I also called a cleaning service. The thought of scrubbing Melissa's message off my wall myself made me physically ill. At work, I got a call from the police officer handling my case. They'd put out an alert for Melissa but hadn't located her yet. Her phone was off, and the cousin in Arizona she'd supposedly gone to stay with didn't exist. I wasn't surprised. The Arizona story was just another lie. But where was she? And what was she planning next? I spent another night at Dakota's, then returned to my apartment the following evening. New locks installed, walls cleaned, everything put back in place. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt tainted. I was making tea when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Is this Alex's sister?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Who's asking?" I replied, immediately on guard. "This is Dr. Reeves at County General. Your sister was brought in about an hour ago. She had your name and number in her wallet as her emergency contact." My heart raced. What happened? Is she okay? She was found unconscious in her car. Possible substance overload. She's stable now, but we'd like a family member to come in if possible. I hung up and immediately called Jordan. This could be another of Melissa's tricks. Jordan agreed it seemed suspicious and offered to go with me to the hospital. We met in the parking lot 30 minutes later. Jordan suggested we check with hospital security first, to confirm Melissa was actually there, and this wasn't an elaborate setup to violate the restraining order. The security office confirmed Melissa had indeed been admitted. A patrol officer had found her passed out in her car in a mall parking lot, empty medicine bottles on the passenger seat. They'd brought her in around 7 p.m. When we inquired further, the security officer explained that when Melissa was brought in, the police had searched her car and found evidence linking her to both the identity theft and the recent break-in at my apartment. There were copies of my personal documents, a notebook with detailed plans, and even the red lipstick used to write on my wall. The officer who made the discovery had recognized Melissa's name from the previous police reports I'd filed and immediately connected the cases. This explained how the breaking and entering charge was added to her list of offenses. A nurse escorted us to Melissa's room. There was a police officer stationed outside her door, which surprised me. The nurse explained that they'd found forged prescriptions in Melissa's purse. She was under guard until she was well enough to be transferred to prison. Seeing Melissa in that hospital bed was jarring. She looked small, pale, with tubes and wires connecting her to various machines. For a moment, all I saw was my little sister, the girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms because she was scared. Then I remembered the message on my wall, the stolen money, the forged documents, the months of harassment and fear. I steeled myself. Melissa's eyes fluttered open as we approached. She looked confused, then focused on me. A weak smile spread across her face. "You came," she whispered. "I knew you would." Jordan stepped forward. "We're only here to inform the hospital that there's a restraining order in place. They should have been notified by the police, but we wanted to make sure." Melissa's smile faded. She looked past Jordan to me. "Can we talk? Just for a minute, please?" I hesitated. Jordan shook her head slightly, warning me, but I needed closure, needed to understand. "1 minute," I said. "Jordan stays." Melissa nodded weakly. I moved closer to the bed, still keeping some distance. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "For everything. The apartment. The messages. I was so angry, so jealous of your normal life." I didn't respond. Sorry didn't begin to cover what she'd done. "I'm going away for a while," she continued. "The prescriptions, they're going to press charges, and I violated the restraining order. I know that." "Why?" I finally asked. "Why did you do all this? We could have had a relationship, a real one. I was willing to try." Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. "I don't know. I thought I could control it this time. The lying, the stealing. But once I started, I couldn't stop. And then I was in too deep. It wasn't really an answer, but maybe there wasn't one that would ever make sense to me. "I'm leaving town for real this time," she said, "when they let me out. I promise you'll never see me again." I'd heard promises from Melissa before. They never meant anything, but looking at her now, I almost believed her. The officer stepped into the room then, informing us that visiting hours were over. I nodded, ready to leave. Melissa caught my hand as I turned away. "I really am sorry," she whispered. "I know you can't forgive me. I wouldn't either." I gently pulled my hand away and left without looking back. Outside, Jordan asked if I was okay. I wasn't sure how to answer. I wasn't okay exactly, but I felt something I hadn't in months. A weightlifting. The beginning of an end. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Melissa was charged with multiple crimes. forgery, prescription fraud, violation of a restraining order, breaking and entering. She pleaded guilty to all charges. The judge sentenced her to 18 months, with mandatory substance treatment. I didn't attend the sentencing. Jordan went and reported back. Said Melissa looked resigned, didn't make excuses, accepted the punishment without complaint. I slowly started rebuilding my life, changed all my passwords, ordered new credit cards, set up fraud alerts on all my accounts, practical steps to protect myself, just in case. But I also started doing things I'd been afraid to do. I went out with friends, took a weekend trip to visit my college roommate, even went on a date with a guy Diane from work introduced me to. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was nice, normal. 3 months after the hospital visit, I received a letter from a rehab facility in another state. Inside was a handwritten note from Melissa, part of her treatment program, she explained, making amends. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't ask me to write back, just acknowledge the pain she'd caused and the steps she was taking to make sure she never hurt anyone like that again. At the bottom, she'd written, I know words mean nothing coming from me, but I am sorry, and I will stay away. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. I didn't feel the need to respond. Maybe someday I would, maybe not. The important thing was that the choice was mine. 6 months later, I moved to a new apartment. Not out of fear this time, but because I found a place I liked better. Bigger windows, closer to work, a fresh start. Taylor and Dakota helped me move. Quinn came by with housewarming gifts, new towels and a doormat that said welcome in 3 languages. We ordered pizza and drank cheap wine and laughed about normal things. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my new living room. No doorbell camera footage to check, no need to look over my shoulder, just me, in a space that was mine, untainted by fear. I still think about Melissa sometimes. Wonder if she's staying sober, if she's found some peace. I don't wish her ill, I just wish her far away from me. The trust issues linger. I'm still careful with my personal information, still hesitate before letting new people into my life. Some scars don't fade completely, but I'm not defined by what happened anymore. I'm not just the woman whose sister stole her identity. I'm me again. Older, warier, but still me. And that, more than anything, feels like victory.